Hello Internet, my name is Ryan Ingram, and today we're going to talk about the impending housing crash of 2021 and how to profit greatly from that. So in a previous video that Ken McElroy posted sometime in July, he goes through why he believes that the housing crash is going to happen at the end of 2021, and he did a much better job explaining everything than I possibly could. But in that video, he talks about how many Americans are currently in forbearance, how many states have paused the evictions, the massive amount of Americans that are on unemployment or using the PPP program or some sort of government funds to help us through this pandemic that we're in, and also the issues that we're going to have with inventory. So I'm going to put a link to that video in the description below, and I highly recommend that you check that video out if you want more information on this. But this video is going to pick up right where we get to the good parts of how you can profit greatly from that. So if you are sold and truly all in on the fact that the housing market is going to crash soon and you want to best prepare yourself or position yourself to make a great deal of money. So we're going to talk about three things, and each of these three have three parts. Again, if you have gone all in, then now is the best time. You've got a lot of leeway to go ahead and figure out all of the things that are going to be extraordinarily pertinent in order to find great deals and be able to purchase them at way below market price. So this housing market crash is largely hinged on people not being able to pay their bills, and when people aren't able to pay their bills, that's when the properties that are secured by loans are going to be foreclosed on. So at this time, I would highly recommend you learn everything about foreclosures. I have a video talking about exactly how to find and buy foreclosures. I think that that's an awesome video, and you should probably start there. And then any questions that that video doesn't answer, let me know and I will happily answer those for you. So I would highly recommend that you learn everything you can about foreclosures. In addition, I would go and figure out how your local county, municipality, or state handles the foreclosure process, and know and learn exactly where you need to go to find the listings, like the sheriff sales or just the publicly available records that will help you understand and sift through all of the active foreclosure cases. Okay, so after you learn about the foreclosure process and you're comfortable with that and how your local municipality handles that, what I would highly recommend that you move on to is learning websites and softwares available to you for these public records. And these websites and apps like Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, Realtor.com, all of these that have a plethora of information about real estate markets. Conveniently, I've also recorded a video called Exactly How to Find Rental Properties, and in that video I disclose all of the daily routines that I go through in order to find good deals on properties. And at the end of the day, it's all about doing as much research as you possibly can, getting clear on what you want to purchase, and then how to get the most number of leads possible, which will ultimately result in the most properties that you have to purchase. So check that video out in order to go into a little bit more detail about how to use software, websites, how to gather leads, and how to buy really good deals. Okay, and from this, the most important thing that you can do is get extraordinarily clear on what your criteria is for purchasing these properties. Now, of course, you want the best deal possible. You want to, make the most amount of money, get the most amount of equity, but what is the criteria that you are specifically after? The more clear that you can get, the more efficiently you're going to be able to use this software, these apps and websites, and you're going to be able to put in a search criteria and set up alerts to notify you each and every time a property that matches that criteria hits the market. I've got several of these set up, and what I think is really cool is by the time I purchase a property, I am generally notified of it via this software and websites 3 or 4 different times. Now, all of the education in the world does not matter if you do not have your finances in order. So if you want to best prepare yourself to make a great deal of money on the impending housing crash, then the first thing that you need to do is dramatically increase your reserves or your cash on hand. Now, of course, increasing your reserves isn't as easy as it sounds because this requires that you either make more money or lower your expenses or sell some stuff that you don't need at the moment. And again, if you are going all in on this housing crash of 2021, then it is going to be a phenomenal opportunity. So how desperately do you want to make a great deal of money and potentially change your financial future over the next decades? There are several millionaires that I know that primarily gained their fortune via the 2008 housing crash. And similarly, if they weren't prepared and didn't think through all of these things, they never would have happened. So if you really want to seize this opportunity, then I would highly recommend, if the only way you have to increase your reserves is by selling stuff, eating rice and beans for several months, then I would highly recommend that you do that, because this housing crash could truly change the trajectory of your financial future. So because there's a good amount of time left before this actually occurs, because of all the money that the Federal Reserve is pumping into our economy, I would highly recommend that you figure out some way to make additional money, whether that is like a side job, a side business that you create, freelancing, or getting another job completely. And one of the super cool things about real estate is it is a pretty safe investment historically, and there are a lot of people that would much rather their money be in real estate, where there is actually an asset that is securing their money. So in the event of a default, they get the property instead of just like a whoops, sorry about that, like you would get in the stock market, because there is no security or accountability there in the stock market. And now you know how I feel about the stock market. So I would go about doing your best. I would research the SEC, all of those guidelines, and I would really go through like your friends and family and figure out who has money just sitting on the sidelines at the moment, and figure out if they would be willing to lend you money at a certain percentage, of course, backed by real estate. Now, I do have an introductory video about an introduction to private money and creative finance. I would recommend that you start there, because real estate investing is a phenomenal way to use other people's money to make you a great deal of money. So the third thing that you should do in your finances is gain access to capital. Now, private money is only one option of many in order to gain access to capital. If you have a home that has a great deal of equity in it, you can do a home equity loan, or you can do a home equity line of credit. Both of those are about the same things. The home equity loan is one that you would get a lump sum of money from a bank in the form of like a second mortgage, and you would then pay monthly payments on that. And that would be able to increase your reserves, because you would get that lump sum and you would put it in a savings account, and then you would constantly be learning about foreclosures and trying to find good deals. However, if you did a line of credit, you would have access to the money and you wouldn't have to pay on the money until you used it. But at the same time, generally when markets start their downturn, the lines of credits are one of the first things that are called, because lines of credits are short-term loans. Generally, they have to be renewed every few years, if not every year. So because of that, if a bank gets uncomfortable with the way the market is going, they'll say, hey, let's get our money back in full from this line of credit. We would like to close this out. And they would have every right to do so. So if the two are equal and you think the market is truly going to crash hard, then I would probably suggest going with a loan over the line of credit. As I mentioned, I've got some friends that became millionaires from the 2008 crisis, but I also have friends that drove into bankruptcy. And the people that I know that it drove them into the bankruptcy, the one thing that they had in common is their lines of credits started getting called, which put them in a very precarious position, because the money that they used on the line of credit was out there in the form of like homes and rehabs and all of that, and they couldn't come up with the money as quickly as the banks called it. So be careful on how you leverage yourself, and the term over leverage gets thrown around really loosely, but at the same time you really don't want to do that. And lines of credits are a very easy way to accidentally over leverage yourself. And the last thing that you should do is analyze each market, because one of my favorite things about this Ken McElroy video is he really went to great lengths to point out the fact that this national real estate thing is not actually real. That's similar to talking about the stock market as a whole. You have tons of sub-markets in real estate. You've got states, you've got cities, and you've even got different areas of the same city inside of these sub-markets. So one part of a city could be doing very well because the prices are already a little bit lower, whereas the nicer parts or the more expensive parts of town will be hit by any sort of market crash a little bit more significantly because it is inflated a little bit more. So I am a huge fan of that, which brings us to the third thing that I think you should do after these two, and that is analyze your market. Now, the larger cities that everybody has been flocking to for a long time, the Californias and New Yorks of the world. I don't know enough about California to name specific cities that people have been flocking to other than Silicon Valley, but nonetheless, I think those areas that are crazy high at the moment are going to be hit the hardest. And then you have places like the Midwest, like the areas that I invest, where I'm still buying properties for 10, 25, 35,000. And of course, I've purchased properties north of $100,000 as well, but the two are just completely different, because how much can a $25,000 duplex that is habitable and in good condition, how can that be worth much less? But if I purchase that same duplex for $400,000, then it's got a lot longer of a way to fall down in the midst of a crash. So the first thing that I would look at is population and where people have been moving to. So if you are able to look at historical population data and see that a bunch of people have been moving to a particular area since 2008, that has most likely caused the prices in that area to go up, which means it might have a little bit longer of a way to fall down during a crash. I also think it would be pretty cool and pretty smart to look at the historical prices. So one of the things that I like to do is when I'm buying a property, I like to go back and look at the previous sales data. And sometimes you can see that if a property is currently on the market for like $50,000, then you look to the 06, 07 range and it's on the market for 70 or 80, which means it hasn't necessarily fully gotten back or appreciated back to the price that it once was. So I feel a little bit more comfortable in that, and I think you can really do this as part of your research as well. I think you can use these websites and resources in order to go back and look at the historical prices of areas and see what homes were selling for in 06, 07, and just kind of gauge where things might fall from there. So the second part of that, historical prices. And the last thing that I would look at, the potential of an area. So I'd really try to take a hard look at, economically speaking, the potential of the area that you are looking to purchase in. So are there jobs coming? Are there jobs leaving? Are there any big plans from the city? Are there any big plans from corporations on moving to that city? I know Amazon has a massive impact on home prices if they announce that they are moving to an area. Consequently, places that are leaving areas also have a massive negative impact on areas. So I would highly recommend that you just, once you find a market that you are comfortable with, that you kind of know, that you see phenomenal metrics on, I would then look at the potential of the area and see if it is more likely if the population will be fleeing or if it's more likely that the population will be coming in, and the actual mechanics of that. So if Amazon is announcing that they are moving to a new location, then that would be great. You are likely to know and be comfortable in the fact that they will likely have a long-term positive impact on that area. Just as an example, this is one of my favorite things about the market that I'm in. I am in Dayton, Ohio, and I really like Dayton because we have the appropriate infrastructure to grow a lot. Our population has been on the decline for quite some time. However, I think it most certainly has the ability to increase dramatically without that many changes. We have a decent sized downtown. We have giant industrial buildings from when the aviation and the automotive industries were here. I kind of like to refer to Dayton as like the Silicon Valley of the aviation age because, you know, the Wright brothers were here and all of the things that went along with that, the infrastructure for those are still here. So there's a lot of room for growth as soon as our location starts picking up steam, recruiting some larger corporations to come back. And when that's going to happen, I don't know. But at the same time, I'm still going to take advantage of all of the extraordinarily low housing prices at the moment until that starts to pick up. And probably after too. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please throw them down in the comments where I'm striving to answer all of them. So thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to check out this foreclosure video because I think that it has a lot to teach you about how to take advantage of foreclosures and bank-owned properties whenever the time comes for the housing market to crash. Thank you guys so much, and talk to you soon.